call the meeting to order at 5:32. I'm going to have the clerk take the roll, please.
Thank you. Councilmember Newton?
Here.
Councilmember Bash? Here. Councilmember Alleman?
Here.
And Mayor Grummeyer?
Here.
Thank you. 4 present.
All right, thank you very much. So we're going to go ahead and ask, are there any public comments before we issue the oath of office to Berwin Hannah? Do we have any cards?
No cards.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we're going to move to issue the oath of office to Berwin Hannah.
All enemies, foreign.
Madam Mayor, can I have 1 minute? Since you know I don't like spending any money, Berwin's going to understand this. I wanted to present this to Berwin. And congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor.
You can open it in front of everyone.
It's safe.
I'm not saying.
Oh, yeah. I had this the other day at the memorial, and Greg's wife took it when we got over to the reception. Then I left. I thought maybe she'd sold it in the yard sale or something. Thank you, sir.
Something for you to sit on.
All right, at this time, we will move on to the reorganization of the city council. Do we have public comment?
I do have one public comment card from Nora Williams.
All right.
Thank you. It's been sitting out in the dryer.
First of all, thank you, sir, for coming back on for us. If anybody would be delighted, it'd be Ted, that you were here to fulfill his seat. And hopefully, I am totally in support of Berwin being made Mayor Pro Tem as well. I think filling that position for Ted as well is very appropriate, and I would love to see it happen. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
I don't have any other cards.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead and move into the reorganization of the city council. And so if it's all right with my colleagues, I want to go ahead and ask if there's any questions or comments from my colleagues at this time.
Yes.
Okay.
So normally there isn't a lot of discussion on this item. Someone makes a motion, it's seconded, and a vote is taken, and everyone votes yes for a number of years. And I think that's because if you follow who's been mayor pro tem and mayor in this city over a long period of time, you start to see a pattern. There's a rotation that's taken place. so that everyone gets a turn. And it's been a pretty good practice. It's been a pretty fair practice. It's definitely a best practice that we see in neighboring cities around us, regardless of the political dynamics present on their council. It takes politics, it takes parties, it takes personalities out of the equation. Skipping over members of the council can cause damage to the community. In the past in Norco, when council members were skipped, it sowed division among neighbors. Rotating fairly, however, lets each resident see the person that they voted for serve as mayor pro tem and mayor. It creates a sense of belonging and community to see the person that you voted for step in and out of these ceremonial roles. It creates a standard of equality at the highest level of our city government. It sets an example that our residents can also expect the same fair and equal treatment themselves. Tonight, we have an opportunity to continue that tradition and to formalize a process that's fair and equitable. I bring this up tonight because residents have asked for it, and it's my duty to represent them. Residents want to know when the people they voted for will serve as their mayor pro tem and their mayor. And they want the process to be fair and clear. I think the best solution is we continue rotating through our elected officials, as my colleagues have been doing for years. That we solidify that rotation in a future resolution, so that each person who's elected to our city council is able to serve as both mayor pro tem and mayor within the term in which they were elected. The order of the 2 or the 3 representatives, depending on which election cycle year it is that they were elected, could be determined in any number of ways. It could be done by the number of votes that each candidate received. For instance, Robin received the most votes, and she was placed in the mayor rotation first. The late council member Hoffman received the second most votes, and he was placed in the rotation next, and so on. Continuing this ensures that each person elected by our residents is able to serve in these roles and represent the people who elected them within the term that they were elected. It would establish a clear policy that reflects the will of the people and it honors their votes. I believe that this council stands for equality and fairness and would want to honor the votes that our residents have cast in each election.
All right, thank you. Any other comments at this time? Okay, so I do have a few comments as well. When an election takes place, people vote for those who think would best represent them up here at the dais. The fact of the matter is each of us gets a certain number of votes, but a large percentage of people don't vote for us. And when we come to this seat, I feel like irregardless of the number of votes or who voted for the people sitting up here, once you've taken that oath of office, you represent every single resident of this community. Not just the people that voted for you, not just the people that like you and support you. You represent every single resident of this community. So as I think about the qualities in a mayor, I want somebody that is going to advocate for all residents of the community. I want someone that is going to take the pleasant experiences of being mayor and mayor pro tem in the same stride that you take the obstacles and challenges that come with the position. And so when we look at the obligations or duties of being mayor, when I was asked to run several years ago, I was actually told by someone who will remain nameless that it was literally 2 meetings a month and brought the smallest agenda packet I think I've ever seen in my life, and that would be my commitment. I think we can, I chuckle about it now, but I think most of us know that that is certainly not the case. There are emails and phone calls to return. There are speeches and comments for service organizations and groups that believe the same things that you do and are friendly and cordial, and other groups that you go to speak to that are not friendly and cordial and don't have the same values and ideas that you do. But again, as a representative of the city, it's your obligation to take those responsibilities on and fulfill them to the best of your ability. There are times when the work is easy and it's fun, and there's time when the work is hard and unpleasant. And heartbreaking, to be honest with you. So I want somebody that is going to respond to emails in a timely manner, respond to emails to residents, respond to emails to staff, respond to emails to colleagues in a timely manner so that we can all get our work done. I want somebody that, again, is going to go speak, and if you can't speak, to at least respond and let them know I'm not comfortable doing that, but thanks for the offer. I want somebody that's going to be seen at community events and attend as many as they possibly can. I know Norco, gosh, we can keep a person busy dang near every day of the week with all of the things that we have going on. But I think it's important to at least pop in and say hi to folks and participate and contribute and support those events as much as you possibly can. And so as I think about the decision of a mayor pro tem and the mayor, while they're ceremonial, they're certainly important to the residents. It's important to people to see you at community events and supporting those things and doing what you can. And then on the backside, for me, it's really important that the stuff that people don't see, that you're meeting your obligations in those areas as well. And so those are kind of my comments. Does anybody else have any comments?
Are there any questions that?
I do have some
Okay.
questions, yes. So, and I'm going to go ahead and just, again, ask Catherine these questions at this time, and if any of my colleagues have questions or would like to chime in. And this is all being brought to you courtesy of the Brown Act, for those of you that might not know. You can only talk to one other person about any item on the agenda, period. And so I had talked to Councilmember Newton. I called Councilmember Allman today because I have some pretty pointed questions to ask. And I talked to our city attorney today, and I could not ask the questions because if I asked the questions and Catherine answered, it would be a violation of the Brown Act. And so we're going to have like a little Starbucks chat, I guess, up here for you guys to kind of see. And this is the process that's been delegated to us by our state legislature, which, again, as Kevin always likes to say, does not actually apply to them. So that's always fun, too. So I have a couple of comments and then questions. So I feel like this particular rotation or time for looking for a mayor pro tem to fill Ted's spot has had an unprecedented amount of what I would call campaigning for the position. And so I would like to know why you felt the need to have to campaign or advocate for yourself in the position.
Sure. So the appointment and the process isn't about me. It's not about having a title. I don't care necessarily about a title. Sure, it's nice to have, and I'm sure everyone who holds that title is honored to serve in that way for their community. But I'm going to work hard for the residents of this town regardless. But it is about the residents who elected us, and it's about the representatives that come after us and who are going to sit in our chairs. And it's about making sure that we have a fair and transparent process. And so at times like this, I think about all of the little girls who are going to come after me, who want to serve their community, who want to run for office. And when they get here, they expect that everything's going to be fair, and it's going to be transparent, it's going to be equal, and it's going to be on the up and up. And I made a promise to myself that I would leave this city better than I found it. And part of that is making sure that the path that I'm paving for everyone who comes after me is fairer, is more transparent, is clearer, is open for anyone who's going to sit in this seat. I don't think it should be, a popularity contest. It should be every person up here is equal and has an equal voice, and their talents and their experience and the things that they bring to the dais should be valued. Everyone up here, I think, has different strengths in different ways. Our residents deserve to see the neighbor that they voted for in those ceremonial roles. I don't see us as gatekeepers. We are all up here representing our people. And it's about equality at the highest level of government. Fair is fair and equal is equal. And the rotation has been followed for many years. I have been asked many, many, many times, when is it your turn to be mayor? When I was sworn in, getting sworn into office, and I came to City Hall and I had to sign all my papers, I have to sign, you give your digital signature, and staff tells you that's for when you get to be mayor, because the assumption is just that it will be rotated and everyone will have a turn. And so I was told by a senior council member, we follow a rotation. We follow a rotation based on number of votes. That's why this time Robin was first and last time Ted was first. And so the expectation was set in that way, as well as, if you are paying attention, I had residents before I even thought of running for office tell me, they rotate. You can just see, they all take turns in this position. And so coming into this space, and wanting to advocate for, part of my platform, part of the reason that I ran was I wanted to make sure that things were clear, that things were open, and that, there are people who have a perception that it's a good old boys club, or that it's just kind of people paying favorites. I certainly don't want that. And so it felt like, and it was insinuated, that this rotation that people expect, and yes, people have been skipped in the past. It was, what I hear, not a good thing for the community, because that person was elected by people, that I would be skipped. And I feel that that's unfair. And not just, for me, but for the residents who voted for me, who they want to see me in that space because I represent for them something that they want to see in our city. And so people had been following, people knew where the rotation was, and when people asked, I told them. And certainly people have the right to come and speak. But I, for me, there are hills that we all choose to die on. And I think that this process should be fair and it should be clear. And so that is why I'm taking the position that I am, instead of, as all the other times, as I mentioned, we come up, someone throws a motion out, someone seconds it, and we all just vote yes. And I've gladly voted yes each time, with the premise that each one of us is qualified to do the job. Each one of us would show up and do a good job. We would bring different things to the job. We don't do the same job the same way. None of us is a perfect council member, but certainly I think all of us show up and work hard for the city and do a good job for the city.
Okay. And then just to be clear, though, should Council Member Hoffman still be here, residents know that it would be unlikely that you would serve as mayor because of the years, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
and I would say that I do think that it would be fair if each person who's elected has a chance to serve, if they so wish, within their term. And unfortunately, with his passing, that does create that opportunity. That wasn't there with the rotation.
Right.
It would have been another year. But I think it is fair. In many other cities, that is how it's set up. Each person in each term they're elected does get a chance to serve, which is fair, regardless of what party they belong to, who got the most votes, or what alliances there may be, or what's going on in the community. They just rotate through because it sets a good example and a good precedent, and that's the tradition that has been happening.
Right. So when there was a Senate bill that passed that required Norco to change from odd-numbered years to even-numbered years, and so it made everything a little wonky, and that's why just the way things would have lined up, Catherine would have gotten to Mayor Pro Tem, but Mayor would not have been an option. So I have two more questions, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is, I feel like we're getting an undue or more than normal, some pressure from folks outside of our community about an election for Mayor Pro Tem. And so I'd like to get your opinion or some comments on that.
I mean, I think that this happens anytime there's any kind of issue with the community. You know, we have people who come who are from the Corona Chamber of Commerce or who are from FFAs from different places. I think people are invested in the communities that are around them and the region that's around them. And so I would say, yes, while we sometimes have people who are weighing in who are in neighboring cities, we also have people who are weighing in who live in their city. And I don't think that's anything that's unusual from anything that has happened before when we've had things come up. You know, the Gold Star Families Memorial, not every single veteran who came, you know, lived in Norco. And I respect that, right? They are they care about this area that we're in. They want to see what's right. And, you know, we support people in politics in different places, and we support good things that are happening in the communities around us, that those communities affect us. If good things are happening in other cities, that bodes well for us. We don't want other cities or other communities to be experiencing, strife in that manner. So I think that when people come, they're welcome. We don't have an ordinance that says you have to be a Norconian to make a public comment. I mean, that's certainly something that some cities do have. And so, I work hard to represent the residents, though, who live here. My first priority is Norco.
Okay. And then the last question that I have, we haven't had our team building time yet, so that's another thing that will be different. The council will have some team building time at the end of the month. And obviously we all think that team and collaboration and working together is critically important. And so I'll just go to like a social media post that you made yesterday about advocating for being mayor pro tem. And I think I understand, and so I want you to clarify if not. My impression is that the social media post was made to, again, advocate, and that when we look at the Brown Act and the rules and the laws of the Brown Act, like sometimes the only way you can get information out is to kind of put those one directional, kind of forward facing social media posts. But I will tell you personally, I feel like it kind of paints your colleagues on the council kind of into a corner as far as if, the vote goes and you're not mayor pro tem, that we're painted to be the bad guys, that we didn't follow procedure, we didn't follow protocols. And I just feel like sometimes when you're putting something out there saying this is what should happen, this is the way it should go, that depending on the lens that somebody's looking at those particular posts, it can be very damaging to people on both sides of the discussion, potentially, because I don't always know that how somebody's going to take that social media post or that comment and what lens they're reading it through. And so I feel like sometimes there's things like that happen that it just puts us in a spot where we're kind of darned if we do and darned if we don't. And I'm just wondering if you can clarify some of that for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? I mean, we can't have these conversations in behind closed doors, right? Because of the Brown Act. We can't all get together and say, hey, let's come up with a good rotation that makes sense for everybody and we'll follow it and it'll be great. Or who do we think should take this term? We have to do it in public. And the reason that it's usually not very contentious is because it just kind of goes in this rotation and everyone just kind of goes along. And so, yes, I talked to our attorney on, what could be done, you're not violating the Brown Act if you share a social media post and no council member likes it or comments on it. And again, I was told the information from a senior council member. Maybe not every council member knows that. Maybe that's not a rotation that everybody knows now. I don't know. I can't go around and ask everybody. I mean, I could do that right now, but so the impression that was always given to me is that it's a rotation. And when I look around and I see other cities and I see that they're rotating, that to me is fair and it looks fair. And it's what I would want in my own city. And it's not about me. It's not, because it doesn't matter who was in the seat. If it's somebody I didn't vote for and I don't like and I disagree with everything that they say, I still think that they should have a chance to serve in that spot. And if they are so egregiously out of line that they have violated the code of ethics, then it is there where they could then be removed from the mayor rotation, right? If anyone does anything that is so damaging to the city, we have guardrails in place. But, for every person who comes after me, I want it to be fair and I want it to be equal and I want it to be established, and so it's clear to our residents that this is how it goes. And the intention is not to put people in corners or make people look like the bad guy, but if we have a rotation that's worked for so long and then somebody gets skipped, it also does people ask why. They want to know why. And residents ask me that, and I try to hold myself to a very strong standard, that I don't want to be a hypocrite. And so it's one thing to break the rules when it works in your favor, but I don't want to do that. I want it to be equal and fair. And when you have a process that's equal and fair, it takes that kind of where you might skirt the rules a little bit because it gets the person you like or it just makes it easier or what have you. It takes that out of it. It takes, as I said, personalities, politics, different things out of it. And so, we're in a difficult spot up here. It's hard to have these conversations. This Starbucks conversation that we're having in front of everybody, right? And asking the hard questions. And sometimes when people are saying something, it's not taken the right way up here. The tone is taken incorrectly. Things are taken personally. People are offended. Comments are made, and are they talking about me? It's difficult. And so I appreciate, that we're able to have this conversation right now. We've never had a conversation about a rotation. These conversations have had in other cities. Some cities have looked to put a rotation in place so that, it stays on the up and up. Because residents eventually, depending on who your candidate or your person or your personal views might say, well, why this person and not this person? And all of us up here are equal. There's no, well, if you serve this many hours, or you do this, you do that, or you get this many gold stars, you get to be mayor. It's just, you have to be elected. And so if there's a standard we want to hold to people to for that, then we should be transparent about that as well.
Thank you. I just want to go back to kind of one thing that I've been struggling with. And I think this position is nonpartisan, period. It's a nonpartisan position. And sometimes I feel like we get caught up in national level politics, and we all crave belonging, right? We all want to belong. We all want to be a part of a group. And I found, like, my observation is that in politics, people are going to go to the group they're going to go to, and there's this huge chasm and divide, right, if we look at the national level between the political parties. And I feel like over the last, we could say 5 or 6 years, that chasm has trickled into the state politics, and we've been kind of in a bubble, I feel like, to a certain extent, on the local level as far as that goes. And I feel like there's pressures on this bubble that are very partisan in nature, and it's concerning to me because, again, wanting to be representative of all of our residents, to be good role models, to show how government should work, how it doesn't matter what letter is, behind any of our names. At the end of the day, the only team we're fighting for is Norco, period. And so that's kind of where I feel like some of these outside pressures are coming into play a little bit more. And it's not so much for me like the people, it's just maybe my idealistic notions that we can just keep Norco this little bubble that's not partisan, and we're all like Team Norco all day, every day, and we can kind of keep those things out. And so I think, I'll be honest with you, I think to a certain extent, those partisan pressures are impacting this decision today, right? And again, everybody's guilty of having those thoughts or your ideology or whatever it is, and sometimes we have to put those aside and look at what the common ground is. I think our common ground is we love this lifestyle. We love having our large lots. We love the sense of community here that's built through all the different events we have. And I hope that as we go through this process and potentially develop a policy, that's something that we kind of keep in the back of our mind. Because again, this is a nonpartisan position. So with that,
Madam Mayor?
yes.
I do have a speaker card, and I believe we are allowed to call this individual.
That's an attorney answer.
Madam Mayor, it's at your discretion. The time for public comment has passed. If you allow public comment from one person, we have to allow public comment from all.
Correct. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go ahead and decline public comment at this time since we already had it at the beginning.
Okay, thank you.
So any other comments or questions from my colleagues? Yes, sir.
Yes. I want to, excuse me. I want to back up what Robin was saying a while ago about the meetings. Like, I remember when she was told she just had 2 meetings a month and everything. Well, that, when I was on here, I was on 3 county commissions, the Riverside County Transportation, Riverside Transit Agency, that's the big red, white, and blue buses you see. Then I was on vector control for a long time, so I had an extra 8 meetings a month. And it's before this, before I got on council, the representatives that, or the people representing Norco that was on those commissions never gave a report to the council people to let them know why we serve on those boards. Now, Riverside County Transportation, I never seen so many commas and zeros in my life as I did when I got on that board with all the money they spend for building roads, improving roads, overpasses, bridges, and stuff like that. And sitting out in the audience, we never knew any of that. Nobody ever gave a report. So I got them to start giving a report. Same way with RTA, the buses. Oh, it's important because you know, there's a lot of low income, a lot of senior citizens ride those buses. That's their main transportation, and it's very important for each city to have a representative on those boards. I was able to get a new bus stop put in down here for the senior center. It has a shade on it and stuff, and we put in 3 new routes over in this area. But the Transportation Commission voted, there's 29 people, I believe. There's a representative from each city, and I believe there's 29 cities in the county. We didn't always vote the same. You know, staff had everything pretty much in black and white what it was, but if you think it's bad, you don't vote for it. But it's important that you sit on those boards. It's important that you go to the meetings. And an extra meeting you get when you're mayor is they have a mayor's meeting once a month. And most of the time there's only about 15 or 16 of the mayors showed up. But what that does is it's a round table discussion. Everybody can get together and discuss the problems they're having in their cities. And you'd be surprised that everything's just about the same. So it's very important that you attend those meetings. It's not just 2 like Robin was told. There's a whole bunch of them besides all the ribbon cuttings and everything around here. But I want everybody to understand what a councilman has to, and a mayor pro tem has to go through. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments or?
Yeah, I
anything
would
from-
just add, just to echo some of your comments, Mayor Grunmeyer, you know, I love the city as well. I moved here to raise my kids. Right now I have 24 chickens, 6 ducks, a dog, 4 fish, and a mouse. I would not be able to have 34 birds on my property and the opportunity to get more if I wanted to go to Linda's Feed after this meeting if I didn't live in Norco. And, you know, and you talked about that partisan pressure and 100%, right? These are nonpartisan seats. And the divide nationally right now is huge. It's not hard to see that, right? You can see that anywhere. But I will tell you from where I'm sitting and my point of view and what people have asked me is, you know, how getting skipped looks in that lens of partisan pressure. So, you know, I've sat up here. I'm on boards and commissions as well. You know, I know the time commitments that being a council member takes, and certainly we all balance those and are at as many things as we can be. And certainly, you know, would do the same for any other additional responsibilities that came my way in service to the residents of Norco and to the residents of this city. So it also feels a little, I'm not sure how. I'll just leave it at that.
Any other comments or?
And I don't want this to seem like I'm airing out dirty laundry and try to be aware of the optics on this, but under the Starbucks conversation lens, at the last council meeting when we appointed Mr. Hanna, I was somewhat discouraged with your comments that you made to council, and that you also followed that up on a video, that I have the feeling that, maybe not intentionally, but you painted your colleagues into a corner and threw us under the bus. You referenced backdoor deals. And so I guess my question is on this, Catherine, is as Mrs. Williams brought up, do you feel uncomfortable, or is there an objection that since Mr. Hanna is taking over Ted's seat, that if he was to be appointed to Mayor Pro Tem, do you have an issue with that?
Well, I think I'd like to address the 2
Sure.
points that you made.
Separately, sure.
So, at our last council meeting, we had a decision to make, and I was the outlying vote. And we're having a Starbucks coffee chat, right, Greg? So, but we're in public. So, I came into that meeting. I read the staff report. There was a little line that said we could appoint immediately. And I said, what? Because I've never seen that done. Not in Norco, not in any other city. And I called to make sure, wait, what? We can appoint someone immediately. And I was told, yes, technically you can. And I said, that looks fishy to me. I think it's going to look bad if we just appoint somebody out of the gate without giving anybody a chance to apply. But the agenda was out. It was already set. And so I, in my head, thought we're going to come to the meeting. I didn't think any of my colleagues would want to do a special election because they wouldn't want to spend the money. But I thought that especially you, right, Greg? But I thought that we would set up a process because that's what was done. I looked up what was done in Norco the last 2 times. There was a process. What was done in neighboring Eastville? Kevin brought up Eastville. There was a process in which people applied. And so I assumed that there would be a process. And so as I'm sitting here, listening to and I brought that up when I made my comments, and I'm listening to my colleagues, and I was shocked that the decision was going to be to appoint someone because I thought it looked untoward. And I feel I will always vote my conscience. I will not just rubber stamp things that come along my dais or my seat or my desk or what have you. And for me, resident input, I ran to serve residents. And so I didn't feel that there was enough opportunity, even though technically, right, they could have come. Because I didn't hear anybody who expected that someone would be, I certainly didn't expect, and I'm on the council, I didn't expect that anyone would be appointed. And so my reaction that night was genuine. I was shocked and I felt a little angry. I felt like that I just was getting brushed under the rug and not being heard. And that comes in these conversations, right, that we've all had up here that are hard conversations and they don't always go the way that we meant, and our intention doesn't always match our impact. And so certainly it wasn't my intention to do any sort of insinuating or offending other than this isn't the process that I would vote for, and therefore I don't think it's the right one. And we'll just have to agree to disagree on that. There are people who agree with me, there are people who don't, and that's fine. And so that's why I voted the way that I did. And what I did say, I always give a recap on my social media after, a 5-minute recap on what happened. And so for me, I did vote no because I don't want anyone to have the impression that there was any kind of backdoor dealing. And to me, it could lend itself to that impression. And if saying that insinuated, it was not meant to be an insinuation or an accusation. And when you're doing those things and you're saying things like, sometimes things don't come out perfectly. I'm not a trained news reporter. And so certainly that was not my insinuation. And I certainly regret, if the tone came out wrong or my words were not as choice, but I felt flustered in that moment. And I was surprised that that was the direction that all three of my colleagues thought was best. And your second comment, I just want to come back to the rotation has been in place. And so it feels like I'm being skipped, and I don't see that there's a good reason to being skipped. Certainly, Councilmember Hanna has been up here. He's done it several times. I have no doubt that he would do an excellent job and that he would serve our community well. He's done it many times. He's an old hat at that. But I'm the only one up here who also hasn't served as mayor pro tem or mayor, and I don't see that I should have any less of a chance than anyone who's up here to do that. And so, I'm always going to advocate for whoever's up here to have their chance to serve in the term in which they're elected. I think that's the fairest. The way it was set up before, that wouldn't have happened, and that's the way that it was set up. But it was still a fair and equal process. It wasn't anything that was personal, or in any other way. So for me, it's about what's right and fair. It's about respecting the will of the people. It's about respecting who they voted in. Not everyone's going to agree with that, but I think having a clear rotation makes it very straightforward about, well, why is that person the mayor? Well, because we just follow this policy, and that's what it's about. You get elected, then you get the chance, to serve.
So there's no issue that you would have with Mr. Hanna that he was appointed and not elected this time?
Well, honestly, he was appointed, and I was elected. And so to pick someone who was appointed when I was elected by the people, I could see that people might take issue with that.
Okay. And then just the other thing, and I'm not one of the best at this, is that, back again on the video, that whether it's mayor pro tem, or council member, it's all about optics. And that what transpired after those comments and that video was a couple of days later, we're reading about this in the newspaper. And there's consequences with that. And, to me, that's troubling. And I guess, like I said, don't want to make it dragging out all kinds of dirty laundry or anything like that. I'd like to make a motion. Okay, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Kevin.
So first, I was involved in 3 deaths. The first was Hal Clark. I think I told the story. It came down to myself and a very long-time city councilman, Dick McGregor, and it came down to me and him, and I'm pretty certain I was going to be appointed. And I looked at him and said, that's the guy you need to pick, and I stepped back. That's what you do when you care about your city. I was here when Greg was appointed. Had Greg not been appointed, we had to deal with a lot of people that thought they knew what it took to be a council person, and they didn't. Had Greg not been appointed, we would not have been solvent today because we would have kept our fire department. He was the swing vote. We would be bankrupt. Those are the kind of decisions that come into play. When Ted died, we all had to get over our grief. We talked about the Brown Act. Ted was the guy I talked to. That was my council person. The only other person really that I talked to Greg, and I talked to Catherine. What's really upsetting about this is as we used words like backdoor dealings, things like that, even though they weren't accusations, I saw people shaking their heads. Sat at this council for 14 years. I'm the highest vote getter in the history of this city. I've sat next to this person, and I'm actually just being painted with a brush that I'm a crook. And that really upsets me. You can laugh. It's not funny. I've worked my ass off up here. I put in 30, 40 hours a week. That's what it takes. You have to go to a bunch of meetings where a lot of people, you don't want to go to them, but you have to not only be at the meeting, but you have to be involved in the meeting, know what they're talking about. And that's why I've sat at chair of WRCOG, chair of the RCA, sit on policy committees for the state of California. I don't like doing it, but I do it because if I don't do it, you will be looking at SB 9, you will be looking at SB 10. There's all these issues that we have to fight for. I have no problem if somebody says, gee, I really disagree with that vote. I just really think I disagree with that. I wish you would have voted another way. But I'm not transparent. I'm not equitable. Anybody look at our city staff. We're not equitable. We don't have equality. We have all these things. I've been in this town since 1961. And so I just wish, I mean, we came through, and Greg can attest to this, and Berwin can really attest to this. We went through hell sitting on this council for how many years, Berwin? 9 years, with no money. And this was a council that what I grieve about is we had 5 people up here that really got along, that got it. And it's not about being partisan. So many times I hear, well, I'm not represented. My phone number is everywhere. Everywhere. My personal phone number. People complain and never call me. Call me. And then in terms of how I arrived at the conclusion, I've been called an effer, I've had people hang up on me. Here's my thought process. We have a brand new city manager who's learning Norco. She's now tasking our staff to do things they've never done before. We are moving to an entirely new level as a city. We are lucky we have a buffer of at least 20 million uncalled for dollars. We have a sitting council person who just went off, who understands what the state is doing, and like it or not, your vote counts. All zoning in the state of California ended January 1st. Period. That's what the state legislature did. So our task is to try to protect your property, your large lots, and find a way to deal with homeless, and find a way to deal with veterans, and find a way to deal with seniors. So rather than wait 6, 7 weeks, and I've been through the process, I heard that people said, well, I didn't know they were going to pick somebody. You would have known. Greg and I would have known. We sat in these meetings for years. That's my standard. I would have known they might pick somebody that night. It's not my fault that people aren't sitting here watching. I didn't think I was going to run this time. I actively went out and I recruited. I tried to recruit somebody. And the biggest comment I got was, you're doing a great job. Why are you going to leave? But it's just very upsetting that somebody would say transparency. When have I not been transparent? So unless this person thinks that the 3 of us sat in that room and said, let's get Berwin Hannah. I know she didn't mean that. I know that. But damn it. That's what, and I see people shaking their head. Wow, yeah, that's what it looks like. But you know what? That's not what it is. I've never done anything like that in my life. So I don't know where this is going to go, because the only person I can talk to is sitting next to me. But she's also sat next to me for 2 years, and I'm angry. Because, you know, I was here. I see Mr. Lima sitting over here. He was here. He knows what the old good old boys used to be. You know how you join the good old boys club for real? You volunteer. You take tickets at Horse Week. They need you as a volunteer. There's nobody that's sitting there going, well, what are we going to plot to do next? You get out there and you get seen, and all of a sudden you become valuable. That's the good old boys club. And they go, gee, you're valuable. But if you're not showing up to these things, I don't know. So again, I don't know where this vote's going to go. I think at the end, if we'd done a longer process, we would have picked Berwyn anyway, and then that would have looked okay. We need somebody now. Sacramento right now is doing legislation that could destroy us. And I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but guess what? You don't know what you don't know. And so I'm tickled pink that Berwyn took this job. I think he's nuts. But he took the job. And he's going to step in and he's going to do the job. So being the mayor of a city, yes, it's ceremonial, but you got to watch the back of your colleagues. You got to watch our backs. I watch every back on this council. Catherine and I, we are, well, I'm middle. I admit it. I'm a middle guy. I have the R, but I'm in the middle. But I do everything I can to protect every council person up here. And I just feel like what's most important is our residents and the fact that we continue to be transparent. But most importantly, that we are viewed as honorable. I know politician and honorable don't go together. But if you were to tell me that Robin did a backroom deal, really? Greg, Berwyn, Catherine. So even to say it just truthfully breaks my heart. And as Greg says, political decisions have consequences. I also don't like getting calls from folks outside my community. I don't like that. Because guess what? I depend on those people because I got an RTRP going on. I've got all kinds of things that I need those people. And the last thing I need is for them calling me up. And they're trying to get me to vote a certain way. So that's all I have, Madam Mayor. I went on too long and I apologize, but I'm really upset about this.
Thank you. Catherine?
If I could respond briefly. There was a newspaper article that came out. I was the only one who voted no. The optics weren't good with what happened, and I feel like I'm getting blamed for that. And that's not fair. I voted my conscience. I voted what I thought was right. I tried to explain to my colleagues what I thought the best way to go was, and they disagreed. And the article was written. I didn't write that article. I didn't contact those reporters. I don't want it to look ever like there's backdoor deals in Norco, which is what I said on a video that got 170 views. Not that many people watch them. I remember you called many council members in Riverside for RTRP. This is what we do. We advocate for our cities, we advocate for our neighbors, and we advocate for what's right. You know, in our ethics training that we just had a couple weeks ago, they talked a lot about public perception matters. We must give more process than is required. We need to make sure that our public thinks everything is on the up and up, that there's no way that they would think that it's not, which is why I voted no. And I feel like I'm getting punished because I voted that way. You know, it just, this is the way, this is the nature of the beast. I think that, you know, that it should be fair, that it should be equal. And we're gonna hold grudges and you know, I just some of the things I would disagree with. You know, I've had you throw me under the bus a number of times, introducing me to people. So I just, you know, this is delving into other coffee shop dirty laundry. So, you know, I enjoy working with my colleagues. I know that they all have what's best for Norco at heart. I have a lot of respect for everybody that's up here because it's a really hard job. I know that even though I've not been doing it as long as I serve on a number of as many or more. I'm as educated or more. I spend as much time and go to as many or as more events. I try to work just as hard as all of my colleagues and to pull my weight as much as my colleagues and to be an equal member of the team. And, you know, I will always try to represent the residents the best way that I can, and that is the way that is why I voted the way that I did, and I did my best to express why that was. And again, I will apologize if that came out wrong, if that was taken as an insinuation. That is certainly not what I meant it to be, but I did think that it was not the best road to go, based on what perception could be. And it had not been done in the past here or anywhere else. And yes, I agree. If we'd gone through that process, Berwin probably would have got maybe he would have been that person. I would have happily voted for him. He's highly qualified, 100%. I agree with all of those things. My issue was the process and not the person. So, you know, we've had a lot of discussion back and forth. I move that we honor our traditions and that we continue with the rotation that it's been practiced, and that we bring back a resolution at a future meeting to formalize it and work out any other details to make it as fair as possible for everyone who comes after us.
Second.
Discussion.
Yes.
Is this a question on a resolution to rotation?
My motion had two parts, that we would continue with the rotation as it was, and that we could have a resolution brought back to us for discussion on whether we, or a discussion on a resolution, whatever, if you'd like to amend that.
Well, I'd like to make a counter to that.
And make me use
A
my
substitute
Charlie
motion.
Pro. Okay.
And this is still in regard to voting for Mayor Pro Tem.
Correct.
I'd like to make a substitute motion.
I think you have to state it and then a second, correct?
Okay.
Yeah.
That, well, I believe that you have concerns with nominating a council member that was appointed to Mayor Pro Tem, and it certainly is a concern that what I've seen on the social media. And we recently had an election, so I would like to nominate Kevin Bash as Mayor Pro Tem, since he was in the most recent election the highest vote getter. So that's my nomination for Kevin Bash as Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to have Kevin serve as Mayor Pro Tem. Will the clerk call?
City Attorney, do
Yeah.
I take a vote on just that second motion or the first one?
You vote on the second motion.
On the second motion?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, vote now, please.
I'm not on.
Yeah, nobody seems to be on. I think I'm gonna have to do a verbal.
Mine just came up.
Councilmember,
You have to go
all
to
of
the,
yours came up too.
you need to go into the council
Yeah.
program. Mine's still loading.
It's not going to let me
Does that mean
get
you
in.
do a verbal?
But
Okay.
I'll wait for Matt after.
Mine's not logging in.
Okay, I do have the mayor's vote. Councilmember Alleman,
Can you come back to me, please?
Councilmember Bash, Councilmember Hannah,
Yes.
Councilmember Newton,
Yes.
Councilmember Alleman.
Did Councilmember Grunmeyer vote on the app?
Yeah.
Voted on her app.
What was her vote?
Am I allowed to say? Her vote was no.
No.
Is that your vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, motion does pass 3-2.
All right, so at this time, we are going to adjourn to closed session.
No,
No, there's not.
Motion
actions taken in closed session.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council went into closed session, discussed only the item conference with labor negotiator, did not finish the discussion on that item, so has continued that item and the other two items on the agenda until after the meeting.
Thank you. So we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Newton, and then we'll have our invocation by Pastor Michelle.
Ready?
Oh boy, have I been praying for you. This is what God said to read tonight. There is an appointed time for everything, and there is a time for every event under heaven, a time to give birth and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to shun embracing, a time to search and a time to give up as lost, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear apart and a time to sew together, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. Let's pray. Lord, tonight we invite your peace. We're so grateful that we can gather here tonight. And Lord, I'm so grateful that still on the wall are the words "In God we trust." And Lord, on this first day of Passover and as we prepare for our Easter season, we are grateful for the love and the power that is still shown by the Lamb of God. We thank you. Lord, your timing is perfect, and while we don't always understand it, your timing is perfect and nothing is a surprise to you. We invite you, Lord, to be present tonight. Come, Holy Spirit, be here. We ask for your blessings on this meeting, for Mayor Grundmeyer and for this city council. And Lord, we pray for the Hoffman family and all who were loved and were blessed by Ted. Lord, I pray for your blessing for all those in attendance tonight. Father, I pray that words and thoughts and decisions would bring peace, would bring unity, would be the very best to foster community. This is such a wonderful, unique community, Lord. And Norco always comes together for good. And so, Lord, I pray a special blessing on leaders here tonight, those elected and those who serve on staff and those who are leaders in their organizations that are represented here tonight. Lord, I pray for the community represented here tonight. You are so good. Lord, we thank you for all that you're doing. Lord, we thank you that we're able to gather freely, and for those who fought and continue to fight to keep us free. Lord, we ask your richest blessings on Horsetown, USA, and God bless the United States of America. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Michelle. All right. At this time, we have a couple of special recognitions and presentations that we'd like to have. So the first one is going to be the Community Spirit Award. So if Patrick and Chris can come on up, please. You guys can kind of stand aside. So it was my turn to do the Community Spirit Award, and for this rotation, I picked Patrick and Chris. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody that I'm super passionate about agriculture and people knowing about where their food comes from and how hard people work to make sure that our community is fed, that the people in our state are fed. California is still the leading agricultural state in our country, and when we think about Norco, and as we get closer to the 100-year anniversary of township and the roots of this community in agriculture, I couldn't think of two better people to get the Community Spirit Award than Patrick and Chris. I feel like Patrick and Chris are really helping to kind of foster this grassroots movement of getting people connected back to the soil, getting people connected back to where their food comes from. And with all the technical aspects of that, which they teach, but within that, it's building community. You're bringing people from diverse backgrounds, diverse levels of education, a variety of ages, together for a common purpose and a common goal. And so big picture, that's so incredibly important to me. And I think that it potentially has the power to make Norco even better than it already is, to make our community stronger, and really to make Norco more special and more of a highlight for Southern California because of our uniqueness, and that people will start to come here for like agritourism kind of stuff and see the amazing things that we're doing in this community. We have new farms in Norco already because of the work that these gentlemen have done. We have new certified egg producers in this community because of the work that Patrick and Chris have done. And I just feel like the sky's the limit. And so any chance that I can get to kind of promote the work that they're doing, I'm going to take the opportunity to do so, because I wholeheartedly believe in the cause, and I believe that it's a good thing for Norco and a good thing for our community and the people that are here to get their hands in the soil, get dirty, and grow your own food. So with that, it's my pleasure to present both Patrick and Chris with these nifty one-of-a-kind. You only get these for special things like this, Norco Horsetown USA pins.
Thank you.
So if either of you would like to.
I'd just like to say thank you to the city of Norco as a whole, both the elected and staff people and the community, because you've all embraced what we're doing, and it's wonderful. Tonight, when we leave here, we're going back to the Eat Center to graduate our third class of apprentices, and on the 17th of April, we start our fourth class. We currently have almost 60 people enrolled, so it's pretty exciting. So thank you.
What Patrick said. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, do we do a picture or are we good? Yeah. Yeah. Diane, can you do a picture? All right, so now we are going to do a proclamation. If Katrin and Debbie would come up and join me at the podium, please. Wishing well over here, yeah. All right, it is my pleasure to read a proclamation for DMV Donate Life Month. So whereas organ, eye, tissue, marrow, and blood donations are life-giving acts recognized worldwide as expressions of compassion to those in need, and whereas more than 100,000 individuals nationwide and more than 20,000 in California are currently on the National Organ Transplant Waiting List, and on average, 17 people die each day while waiting. And whereas the need for donated organs is especially urgent in Hispanic, Latino, and African American communities, and whereas a single individual's donation of the heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, pancreas, and small intestine can save up to 8 lives, and the donation of tissue can save and heal the lives of more than 75 others. Whereas organ donors saved more than 42,000 lives last year, the most ever, and whereas any person can register to be an organ, eye, and tissue donor regardless of age or medical conditions, and being a registered donor does not impact the quality of life-saving medical care a person receives in an emergency. And whereas California residents can sign up to be a donor at any time online or when applying for or renewing their driver's license or ID card at the California DMV, now, therefore, I, Robin Grunmeyer, Mayor of the City of Norco, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2023 as DMV Donate Life Month and encourage all Norconians to check yes online or when applying for or renewing their driver's license or ID card at the DMV.
Thank you, Mayor Grunmeyer and the City Council members. Hello, my name is Kat. I am the mother of 3. My 11-year-old son, Christopher, was autistic. He was in the 6th grade. He loved trains and Batman, and unlike many autistic children, he didn't shy away from affection like most kids do. He would be the first one that would need a hug or would want to cuddle, and he would come barreling into a room. I mean, like Kool-Aid Man style, barreling into a room just to shout, "I love you." I miss that, hugging my big little boy and hearing him tell me he loves me. Almost 5.5 years ago, he accidentally suffocated in his therapy swing in our home. He was rushed to Kaiser and then immediately sent to Loma Linda Children's Hospital. I don't know what I would have done without the care and the support of his healthcare team. Unfortunately, after exhaustive efforts, they were unable to save him. But because of the hard work and the care that they gave him, he was able to save 5 lives through organ donation. His kidney and pancreas went to one man. His liver went to another man. Both of his heart valves went to children under the age of 5. But Chris's other kidney went to this amazing little boy named Eddie. Eddie was born with dysplastic kidney disease. And at 3 months, he was put on a feeding tube, and at 10 months, he was put on dialysis. And Eddie spent the first 3.5 years of his life in and out of hospitals fighting for his life. When his family finally got the call that there was a kidney for Eddie, my Chris's kidney, he was on dialysis 10 hours a day. That was almost 6 years ago now. Today, Eddie is an energetic and active 9-year-old. He plays baseball and soccer and the violin, and he is in the 3rd grade. And although Chris will never again go to school or play outside, I now have the great joy and pleasure of watching this little man live his very best life because of my little man. Chris used to tell us he was a cyborg, made up of different parts and pieces, and whenever he was sick or injured, he'd tell us he could swap out his old pieces for new ones. As you can imagine, we never had a conversation with our 11-year-old son about what he would want us to do if he were to suddenly die. But I take comfort in knowing that if he'd had the choice, this is the one that he would have made. His cyborg dreams are now a reality. There are still 105,000 people waiting for that gift of life. 22,000 of them live here in the state of California. Anything that we can do to make people aware and informed about this amazing life-saving choice, we need to do. Chris is gone, but he lives on in others. Chris is gone, but he is not forgotten. And because of the gift of organ and tissue donation, he is not only remembered by us, his family and friends, but also by the family and the friends of the lives that he helped save. And for that, I will forever be grateful. Thank you.
If council would come down and join us for the picture for the proclamation, please. Yeah, I would certainly encourage you, if you don't have that little pink dot on your driver's license, to please do that. Can't take your parts with you, so. We are going to go ahead and move on the agenda. So we're going to start with council reports on regional boards. Councilmember Alleman.
On March 16th, I attended 2 meetings, the first of which was the Cal Cities Environmental Quality Policy Committee meeting. We had some updates on bills, and I'll talk about one of those at the end, but basically things that were in line with Cal Cities platform. We're advocating no on things that are clearly in line advocating yes, and then there are some bills that are going to be examined and looked at for further consideration, and I'll talk about one of those later. There was also a presentation on circular economy, which is basically looking at designing waste and pollution out of the system. So instead of having products that automatically create things that need to be recycled or thrown away, how can we design those out of the way, looking at regenerating natural systems and keeping products in use. And California is really at the forefront of this in terms of trying to minimize content, plastic content, or making sure that when it says it has this much recycled plastic in it or paper, it really does. I don't know if you've ever noticed there's often recycled signs on products that actually can't be recycled. There's nowhere you can find to recycle, for example, a red Solo cup, even though it says it's recyclable. So there are a number of rules that are coming out from Cal Recycle that are going to be updating those sorts of regulations. And then also attended the Northwest Mosquito and Vector Control meeting. They're gearing up for mosquito season that will be starting soon, and the graphic up here is from the organization. With all of the rain that we've been having, it's really important that you dump, scrub, and drain after the rain, making sure that there's no places on your property where mosquitoes can breed. On March 27th, I attended 2 RCTC meetings. One was the I-15 ad hoc committee meeting, and the biggest thing the main item that happened here was looking at adding project phasing to the I-15 Express Lane South. So many of you are familiar. You try to drive down the I-15 South and you get stuck in that bottleneck of traffic through Corona. There's been a plan in the works for a really long time to add toll lanes all the way down to Elsinore, and that would also add some other lanes to free up that bottleneck. Well, things have gotten more expensive in 10 years and funding sources have changed. So it was approved that a recommendation that will then move on to the next committee and then to the full commission that there's project phasing. So basically it can be done in increments, which then would allow for funding to be got for it piece by piece, because there's just not money to do the whole project in one fell swoop. And at the Western Riverside County Programs and Projects, the biggest item there was an agreement with the San Bernardino County Transit Authority because the toll lanes that are going north on the I-15, the entrance and the exit for where the new parts of the toll lanes are coming in, it's not right on county line as it is on the 91. You enter and you exit right where the border starts at Orange County. So the toll lanes that have been there since I was in high school, those are actually Orange counties, and the newer ones are Riverside counties. But it's very easy to get in and out, whereas it's not this on county line, where it doesn't work that way on the 15. So this was a long time in the making, but an agreement was made, and San Bernardino Transit Authority is going to manage the overlapping part of Riverside County territory after Canto Galeano, and then they're going to manage it, and they're going to reimburse Riverside County for our fees. So it was a lot of work to get a lot of different agencies to agree to all of the different pieces, but that's good for our county and the revenue that will come from the tolls. And then just a couple other notes. They're looking at, this is going back to the I-15, they're looking at different ways to get funding, and there's a loan, federal loan, it's a TIFIA loan, that it funds part of the I-15 South. And in the loan docs, there's a requirement that a certain amount of revenue is generated by those toll lanes so that RCTC can pay back the debt every month. So that actually influences how much the tolls are, because the loan requires them to be a certain amount so that it can be paid back. And so in order to free up some money, they're looking at paying that back. And just on a side note, I don't know if everyone knows, but on the toll roads, when you pay your toll, it's not based on how many cars are on the other side of the toll lane. It's based on how many cars are in the toll lane. So if there's a lot of cars in the toll lane but none on the other side, you pay a higher toll versus a lot of times people think, oh, it must be because there's a lot of traffic coming up. That's why it's a higher toll. It just means there's more cars in the toll lane. And so that's something that Corona and Norco had been working on, kind of a truth in tolling, but wanting to make sure that people understand what they're paying for when they're paying those tolls, because it's a common impression that if you pay more, you're skipping more traffic on the other side, and that's not the way the toll policy has been set up. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Bash.
March 17th, Norco College President's Breakfast. R.J. Brandis was the guest speaker. It was a really, really interesting breakfast. All the Mookie Mooks from around the county were there. I really love that college, and there's a lot of really cool things happening afterwards. There were breakout sessions. I did the early childhood development one, but there were several engineering, electronics, all kinds of different fields of study, architecture. March 22nd, the Azevedo Memorial Committee meeting. We saw a wonderful design. I'm really happy. Amanda has just done a stellar job, and I don't know. I think that Councilman Newton would agree. I went to March 23rd a City Coalition Housing Information meeting, and it was interesting because the Huntington Beach attorney was there, and it was very interesting the battle they're putting up. Again, my opinion, I think that a lot of times people will go around city councils and go higher up, and they don't realize what they're doing is they're actually destroying kind of how the system works. I kind of wish them well. March 28th, Inland Empire Realtors. I just have to give, supposedly she just threw it together, but the city manager, I just really kept my mouth shut and just let her take the ball. She was just absolutely outstanding, and I guess Kelly created and it was, I just threw something together, and I was just like, wow, it was really amazing. I want to live in Norco. Went to March 30, the annual Gross conference dinner. That was really a lot of fun. It was nice to see other commissioners there from the Agricultural Historic Commission there. I was real proud of Robin. I'm always proud of her whenever she speaks. People just really listen. I hope that we can sponsor that next year. That was really cool. RCA Board of Directors meeting. The big issue that's going on there is there's a loophole in the RCA, and what's happening is developers are understanding that if it is considered part of the plan, they can pull some strings, and the RCA has to pay they have to buy the land. And so what's happening is developers going, wow, we can sue if you don't buy the land from us. So that loophole has to be repaired very quickly. WRCOG Executive Directors, not a whole lot of things happened there. Veterans Committee, we're beginning to put together the Memorial Day. We booked Shantae Olivas. I'm really happy about that. She's coming back. And then one of the things that is actually more important is that, and I didn't include it there, is the Cal Cities Policy Committee, Taxation and Revenue. It's a very different committee that I'm used to. It's like nobody talks. But they send me emails and they send me texts going, attaboy, attaboy. And I'm like, all right, well, come on, guys, somebody speak up. One of the big issues that we're trying to navigate is the fact that if you have a warehouse like Amazon in Eastvale, you basically get just about all the sales tax that goes to that. It's a very unfair system in our view. But what was really interesting is that one of my problems is Cal Cities has a certain position on it, but we have people in other cities going outside the system actually fighting the Cal Cities position. You can't blame them because they have a warehouse. In fact, one of the texts I got was from the former chair of this committee who said, well, we have Apple in our area, and we did write a letter to the governor stating, please keep it the way it is because they're making buku bucks. Well, the problem is how many people here have an iPhone? How many people here have an Apple computer? And so it's statewide, and so we just think that it's just short of they should sort of share the growth. And that's all I have. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Newton.
Thank you. So within the last 10 days or so, we've had 3 subcommittee meetings on the RTRP with along with Councilmember Bash, our Public Works Director and City Manager. And we're kind of working through it and making a little bit of progress. I did want to mention on the Spirit of Norco subcommittee meeting also that Amanda's done a great job, but we're also doing this with Pat Daniels with Caprock is donating the funding for this memorial, and so he offered up his landscape architect to do the design, and so right now it's classy but simple, and I believe our next step is for the design to be reviewed by the Azevedo family and get their blessing or changes on that. Then following that, I had my first LAFCO meeting. And that was uneventful. And then I know it's not a regional meeting, but I always put T-ball because those little munchkins make me laugh. And so it's always fun. Thank you, Mayor.
And I have nothing to report at this time. So we are going to go ahead and go on to the next agenda item, which is our consent calendar item number 2. Are there any things that anybody would like pulled? Kevin?
2C, 2D, and 2J.
Oh, 2C as in cat, 2D as in dog, and then 2J.
Right, as in Jacoby.
Okay. Any other items to be pulled? All right. Are there any comment cards?
No comment cards.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I will ask for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. The clerk will call for the vote.
Okay, it's sent to vote. You should all be able to vote. Mr. Hannah, have you voted? Oh, there we go. Very good. Motion passed 5-0.
All right, perfect. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 3, which is the items pulled from consent. So, Councilmember Bash, we'll start with 2C.
Yeah, I just kind of want to do a brief summary of, or do your presentation of the city investment policy. I'd like people to know the extent of our investments.
Sure, you bet, Mayor Pro Tem. So this item is the annual adoption of the city's investment policy and provides an annual review. So the government code states, Government Code Section 53-646 states that the treasurer or chief financial officer of the local agency may render to the legislative body a statement of investment policy. And while it used to be you were required to revisit your policy annually, that's no longer the case, but as a matter of good practice, Norco continues to revisit the policy annually. So this year we consulted with PFM Asset Management to assist in reviewing our asset policy, our investment policy, to make sure it's keeping consistent with California Government Code sections. So it's important for folks to understand that the city can't just set its own investment policy. You know, there are very specific boundaries that the state has established for local governments, and with very good reason, right? We are not interested in chasing cryptocurrency or untoward gain. Our goal really in any good investment policy is really 3 pillars. And in this order: safety, liquidity, and yield, right? So within that, with those 3 parameters, the city can invest in only in certain types of assets. So we're precluded from investing in any securities, so no stocks. Those are not permissible in California for any local government. Instead, our investment policy calls for a mix of really conservative types of investments, everything from federal treasuries, securities, other kinds of corporate notes, supranationals, local agency investment funds, and so forth. So the city has always taken a very conservative approach. Most of our assets are sitting in the local agency investment fund, which is essentially a liquid sort of place to be. But we do want to look at some other ways, that, again, with safety and liquidity first, looking at how we can gain some yield on our portfolio, which can be significant at times, right? When you look across all our funds, on any given day, we can have $60 to $90 million in our portfolio. So we do want to be prudent about how we invest that. So the one change you'll see here is we are looking to add local government investment pools as an option, specifically the CAMP pool, which is a JPA that's been around for many, many years, of other public agencies that does some investing together, and has also created sort of like a CD, if you will, a CD option. They don't call it, it's not technically a CD, but it's something like that for local governments. So we're recommending approval, and again, really proud of Lisette and her team working through this update to our policy.
I just have one question, and thank you. I like the $60 to $90 million investments. I like that. The city treasurer, we don't have a city treasurer. Is that a requirement, or does Lisette serve as the city treasurer? We used to have one.
So there's a resolution that establishes that the finance director is the city treasurer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should we say finance director, or is it okay just city treasurer?
It's a role that is fulfilled by the finance director. So
Anyway,
that
thank you.
technically in the state statutes, it's referring to the city treasurer, and then someone has to wear, it's a hat that is worn by someone.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Are there other questions? Councilmember Newton.
Well, I'd like, I also had a discussion with the city manager on this, and this has to go, obviously, with overall policy review, which is preservation of capital. And our discussion was based on market and interest rate risk, and this absolutely drives me crazy, is that with interest rate risk, market value, and the effect of yields, which I'm going to ask Lori to kind of give us an overview on that, because if you remember in our last quarter, we're taking a pretty good financial hit on this and trying to keep hope for recovery. So if you want to paraphrase a little bit of our discussion and
bet.
address interest rate risk.
You bet. And I can clarify also, I would suggest that what is taken a quote hit would be the book value of our securities. So this may be harkening back to economics of high school for some folks in the audience, but essentially, you know, as I've mentioned, treasuries and other similar federal investments, Freddie Mae, Fannie Mac, those are considered very conservative investments. Those are bonds, right? In a low interest rate environment, so when interest rates are at 1, 2, 3%, bonds are higher in value because they have a locked in interest rate. So maybe the bond is paying 2%, interest rates are at 1%, that bond's a good deal. So that bond on the open market, if I go to sell the bond, has actually a higher value than the face of the bond. Maybe the bond is for $10,000, but because it's yielding more than the prevailing interest rate, its market value is higher than its actual face value. So that's what happens in a low interest rate environment. But in a rising rate environment, that bond that I bought for $10,000 for 2%, that is not an attractive investment to a new investor, right? They'd much rather go buy a new bond that the Treasury is selling today for 4%, right? So the face value of the market value, the market value of that bond may not be $10,000. It may be $9,800 or $9,500 because it's not worth as much on the market today as it is. So as Councilmember Newton noted in our last investment report, you'll see some of that reduced book value on some of our bonds. But here's the beauty of it for local government. That's only a book loss and not a true monetary loss because we don't need to sell that bond. If you have to sell that bond today and get the 10,000, I wouldn't get my 10,000 back. I'd get 9,500, right? But as long as you hold it to maturity, you get your $10,000 back along with your interest. So we have no intention of liquidating those assets that we have that are where the market value is lower than the par value. We'll hold those and we will not see a loss. If there are agencies, though, that had too much tied up in those investments and need to liquidate to meet cash flow needs, they may, in fact, recognize a true loss. So we are not recognizing any loss to our treasury, but you will see that book value look kind of odd. So it's a function of this kind of strange market environment that we are in. Hope that makes sense.
Any other questions from council? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
It's been motioned and approved to approve 2C.
Go ahead and vote, please. Thank you. Motion passed 5-0.
Thank you. Moving on to item 2D. Mayor Pro Tem Bash.
Yeah, the reason I pulled this is I want to demonstrate or measure our funding at work. Who's got this one? Yeah, Chad, make your presentation. You being shy over there?
Thank you. This is our annual slurry project. Actually normally have this project in our basically provide a slurry seal treatment. Have in this project level of higher level before it ever goes down to anything we're very happy to be doing these projects and keeping our already decent streets fairly low cost.
So the one question is sort of a corollary is I'm getting a lot of stuff about potholes, and if you could talk about statewide why our pothole situation is worse probably than it's been in a long time. Could you maybe explain the process, what you're doing to alleviate the problem, and why the actual fixes are rising?
The big culprit is what we've all been praying for years is water. Rain is just potholes because it gets in every and asphalt it creates a lot of work for us. Had our staffs out there extremely busy trying potholes. So we've had crews on got really hole replacement or in large bag of asphalt in a hole is not good enough. We have plans and we're working and shifting our priorities, for the next year. out there searching every day. Nice problem to have in that California as a whole, especially for.
Thank you. And then Lori, can you, what's the percentage of streets that we've actually repaired?
I should know.
37.
I should know this. Yes, it's around 40% of all of our streets have been touched in the last 6 years. So it's real kudo to number one, the voters of Norco for approving Measure R, and then to the council for allocating those funds, and to the public works team for executing on those projects. As Chad noted, there was quite a balance that had been built up over the years in the street development impact fee fund, and we've successfully exhausted that fund. We've spent down that money. So Chad and Sam and the team have just been grinding out projects, pun intended. So there's more to do for sure. We know that we have some areas of town that have very distressed streets. I know we heard from some residents this week about it. We do have a pavement management system. That is a database that tracks the pavement condition index, or PCI, of all of our streets. And so staff is making data-driven decisions about what streets to conquer next and in what order, and also with what treatment. So to elaborate on Slurry, Slurry is not a great treatment if your street is falling apart, right? So it's an excellent investment, as Chad noted, for those streets that are already in pretty good condition that you want to keep that way. Slurry is that preventative treatment on top. Other streets, you really need that full sort of mill and overlay, right? It's really a reconstruction sort of scenario that's very expensive. So we're trying to make really smart decisions. As you know, where we have storm drain projects, the team has decided to feather in street rehab to follow. So that's a way to get better bang for our buck. And also, it doesn't make sense to pave a street that we know we're going to put a storm drain on in 2 years, right? So trying to make good decisions. I know sometimes that's frustrating to residents who see they want a particular street done. And I would just suggest that they continue to follow the GIS map. That, again, Public Works has a great map up that shows what we've planned this year and what's coming. And we'll continue to update that. It's a great resource online so residents can see what's coming. But we have made incredible progress in this community, and we'll continue to do so.
Thank you. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Does council have any other questions?
I have a question, please.
Okay.
Chad, over there off of 2nd Street, what they call the JR spread, I noticed you're resurfacing some of those roads. Do you know where I'm talking about?
Apologize, no, I don't know the GR.
Okay, it starts at Western and goes back into all those little streets in there, Riding Horse and Paddock Lane and all that. Well, when I moved here, I was told that that was the only homeowners association in Norco. Then I was told that there is no homeowners association in Norco. Then I was told that they pay for repairing their streets. Then I've been told that they don't. So what's the story on that? Or do you tax the homeowners over on those streets for the street repair and all that, or is that included in all of our city stuff?
Tax or assessment that's on any properties in those areas?
So they're not private streets, they're city streets. Okay, well, been here 37 years now, we're gonna finally get that straight. Thank you.
Well, they do have an HOA that covers their riding ring. They have a private riding ring off Riding Ring Road. Yeah, so they do have an HOA, but it goes towards the riding ring. It doesn't cover, I don't believe, anything else, any landscaping. Right, yeah. So they pay a very small fee, but it goes towards the maintenance of their ring that is not the city's ring. It belongs to that neighborhood and those neighbors that belong to the HOA.
They also used to have the park that's over there. They also used to cover that, but we took that over several years ago. We took it, so.
And then just to add, so residents could also report potholes using the city app, correct? That's being monitored and versus calling. If they wanted to just download the app, if they don't have it, they could report it through that. Okay, perfect.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
Motion to approve.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item 2D.
Thank you. Go ahead and vote, please. It won't go through. Okay, I can put it in. You vote yes. Thank you. Motion passed.
All right, thank you. Item 2J. Kevin?
Yes. Who's going to do 2J? Just to kind of explain it. I warned you guys. The reason I'm doing this is because I want people to know where their money's going. And I think sometimes people don't realize how much Public Works is doing and how much good is being done by the money that Measure R and the different taxes and the fees and stuff they're paying are doing.
I'm going to give credit to Sam. Project.
Oh. And Sam is, what does he do?
And everything I need.
Howdy. So this project is basically a storm drain project that goes from the intersection of Sierra Avenue and Forest Street. Kind of right now, if you go that area, most of the street drains to a couple small little basins that are there, and of course it's pretty flooded pretty bad. So what the project's going to do is basically extend a large tube, probably I think it's a 24 or 36 inch pipe, easterly on 4th Street all the way to about Valley View, along the way having catch basin inlets on each side of the street to kind of pick up that water that's basically concentrating and remove the water that causes potholes. Once it gets to Valley View, it's actually going to go north and south. The north leg is going to go to the Disney property and allow them to have a spot for them to drain into for the issue they have right now with their big swimming pool that doesn't go anywhere. The south leg is actually going to be a continuation, actually part of the storm drain project and street project for the N5 stuff that's actually in construction right now. So we couldn't get the storm drain that's in construction right now going up 3rd Street and Valley View to go that far north because of slope. So basically that's the last leg that's going to go south and work in tandem with the storm drain project we're getting there, and hopefully dry some people out. A lot of ponds out there.
Oh, I know you now. You were the guy that was in the parka and you were actually shoveling out there, right? I thought you were just another Public Works guy.
So yeah, it's just, I mean, everywhere in this town, there's ponds everywhere and people get flooded. So it's a big project, very expensive. Same thing we're doing over on 5th Street. Same thing extending from Sierra Avenue all the way to about Valley View to the yard. So
Why is the cost increase?
everything's expensive. There's material costs, there's material delays, labor costs, inflation. We're seeing projects double. So thankfully, the county flood control is basically been gracious enough to pay us that money. So we're just getting as much stuff in the ground as long as they have that piggy bank for us.
Do you know how many projects we save residents? I mean, how much money we save residents by doing projects in tandem? And back in the old days, what we would do is fix a street and then have the county come in and fix it and tear it all up. We don't do that anymore. But how many projects do you have through the county, and maybe a ballpark what kind of money we save?
I think it's maybe more of a measurement of time and effort by the residents in this, like for instance, Hillside Avenue. We put the street there, we got the storm drain in. Those guys got wiped out consistently. They had berms that were 3 foot high in front of their house.
Yep.
So a lot of these people are just grateful that every time there rains, they're not just huddling down or having to go to the fire station to grab all the sandbags to basically sandbag it up. So it's more, I think, in that respect. I mean, some other places, they get water, but again, a lot more times it's nuisance, and the Norconians have actually been pretty diligent. They've dealt with it. It's just more of an inconvenience, right? Their houses are saved, but their property has a river going through it. Kind of have something like that over your neck of the woods. On Temescal and 5th Street, there's a couple big ponds that always, every time it rains, you know, there's a flood. In fact, one of the things we like to say is it's a toilet overflowing in this town. There's a flood. So.
Well, I actually remember when there were no sewers, and so does Larry, and people would just take their septic tanks and just put a pump and just put it right in the street.
Oh, yeah.
I want to highlight that, again, to give credit to flood control. Tens and tens of millions of dollars in Norco. flooding when I started in 2016. Mass flooding and mud. Put their money where their mouth is and doing projects on their own, giving us tens of millions of dollars. Projects right now we're doing for tens. Great partner. They really like Norco because we get projects done. 2010 we had a similar amount of rain and it was a mess. Had very, very little issues. Except Em had to help out over at Disney, but it was.
So was you.
It's been amazing how much of a difference it made. So flood control is a great.
So the reason I'm taking time to do this is that when we became a city long ago, everybody knew that because of the large lots that we would not have the things that other cities had. But as new residents moved in, they wanted the large lots, the rural lifestyle, and they wanted to have storm drains, sewers. And so for a city our size to be doing 37% of the streets, to work so well with the county, for a city our size, that's actually unprecedented in some ways. Very few cities of 25,000 people get the work done that we're getting done. Would you say that's correct?
Absolutely.
So anyway,
Sam,
thanks.
when will that project be completed there on 4th and Valley View in that area?
The project currently in construction, or this one we're talking about right now?
One on, yeah, the storm drain on 4th and.
It's slated to be done by mid-August, because not only is it a storm drain project, but it also has a street aspect to it. And then there's water relocations, sewer relocations along with it, and unfortunately the contractors had some learning curves to deal with digging underground in Norco.
Well, I remember that was one of the worst intersections in town for flooding, holding water, and that little house on the corner. Then when they built that horse farm back in behind there, it just kind of made it worse, and they even got flooded in there because there was no drainage. But I'm glad you're finally getting that done.
It's going to be nice, and on Valley View especially, it's such a flat street that those residents are going to be so happy that they don't have water cascading from the high side of the road to them.
Right. Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
That's all I have, Madam Mayor. And just for the record, I could have pulled 2K and 2L also if I wanted to, just to sort of emphasize the fact so much is getting done. But that's all I have, and thank you guys.
Thank you. Councilmember Newton.
You're not getting off that easy. What's your time frame on this project?
I believe it is a 60 to 75 day project.
And start date?
For this? For N4?
Right.
Oh, I would imagine if it's being awarded, we probably have a pre-construction meeting within the next 3 to 4 weeks. And then material procurement, probably maybe 2 months at most. RCP pipe seems to be readily available. Some sizes are not shelf ready, but what we're seeing the most of is water stuff. Water valves having 20, 25 weeks lead time. So if I have like dog legs or any type of relocation work I have to do, I have to take that consideration when these guys are doing their work.
So about 90 days. Is that what you have in your schedule?
I mean, you never know. These contractors sometimes take longer than it is, and we end up finding other stuff in the ground that delays the project itself. In this particular project, we actually have a major water line relocation effort at the intersection of Sierra and 4th Street. We actually have a transmission main. We have a changeover. We have another main that needs to be relowered, and some of that stuff can take a long time because, again, once you start digging up the road, find all kinds of crazy stuff. So.
Well, we should be aware of that because in item 2L, we're paying additional engineering fees for that.
Right, exactly.
Okay. So my recommendation, I've talked to Chad about this a little bit, is, and it's on carryover projects. And as we get into our next budget, we need some wins in this. And on these carryovers, believe me, I understand cost increase, but the original budget on this was $800,000 for the work, okay? Materials have gone up, labor's gone up, but it hasn't gone up $1.4 million to bring this job to $1.8 million. And my recommendation is that as we see these on these carryovers, we need to be adjusting our budget as we go along.
Absolutely. In fact,
Okay.
it is our last budget cycle, we requested in lieu of new projects, additional funding for or projects across the board, understanding that this was coming.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's going from 800,000 to $1,000,008. It's a big jump, and we didn't see it coming. And I think we just need to watch that a little bit closer.
Mayor, if I may, and this is something Councilmember Newton and I spoke about, and we agree. A lot of these construction cost estimates are older estimates. I understand some up to 4 years old, so we do need to do that, update our estimates. So when we work on our next cycle of budget projects, we'll be doing that. So, yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions or comments?
S-
It's been moved and seconded to approve item 2J. Clerk will call for the vote.
Go ahead and vote, please. Motion passed 5-0.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item number 4, public comment.
Madam Mayor, I do have 2 cards, 2 speakers.
Okay.
Please limit comments to 3 minutes or less. The governmental body shall not discuss or act relative to any general public comment. Our first speaker is David Burwell.
Good morning, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members. My name is David Burwell. My family bought a home in Santa Fe Springs in 1951 and lived in that home until 2021, 70 years. My parents bought a home in the city of Walnut in 1984 and currently reside there. My mother still does. I moved to Norco in 2009, not expecting to get involved in politics or the community at large. Over off of 2nd and Valley View, where CarMax is, there was a proposal to put a couple of restaurants and a hotel, and that was the first time that I stood in front of the city council. There are a lot of things that have crossed my mind in recent times, some of which are I'll say recent developments as mayor, mayor pro tem, and council members with the passing of Ted Hoffman. Recently it was discussed that all council members become mayor and mayor pro tem in their first term. The only way for that to happen is a 42-week interim. The city of Walnut was actually second to last to eliminate 42-week terms for mayor pro tem and mayor, going to a 1-year cycle. All cities in California, to my knowledge, are currently on 1-year cycles. In order to become mayor, you must be reelected a second time, and that is if you are nominated by your council members and appointed. Simply becoming mayor pro tem, sorry Kevin, does not guarantee that you will be mayor on the next round. You can be mayor pro tem multiple times. Robin, sorry to say it, but you can be mayor multiple times in a row as well. City of Riverside, Ontario, Los Angeles, and Long Beach each have elected mayors. People campaign for those positions, drive for those positions, get appointed. Fred the Cat was the mayor of Harmony for a number of years and passed in 1998. So in some cases it is ceremonious, in other cases it's very serious and a political move. Running for city council should not be to attain the title of mayor pro tem or mayor, and it should not be the driving force. Serving this community is, a small community like ours has to have representation at all levels, from the smallest voices and the smallest groups out there to the large groups like the horse keeping community that we live in. Community spirit must be displayed and shown at all levels. I encourage members of the audience to volunteer for Horse Week, taking tickets at the door. Good suggestions. There are many members in this audience that would be very well suited on a lot of committees. that did not get appointed to those committees. I'll finish that thought later. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, Bonnie Slager.
Good evening. Congratulations, Berwin. Congratulations, Kevin. And I want to congratulate all of you on remaining civil during your earlier meeting. It's nice to see that we can disagree without uncivil. So thank you for that. Wait, passed out. Berwin probably has this list memorized. As we do annually, Norco Horsemen's Association is presenting our 10 most needed trail improvements. I've already presented this to Streets and Trails Commission a while ago. So unfortunately none of these got done last year, and some of these have been on the list since Berwin was a whole lot younger. And so we hope we can see some changes on this list next year. And also, in addition to this list, I know the Streets and Trails Commission has suggested that the backyard trails perhaps be included in the trail cleanups. And so please don't forget about the backyard trails. They do need to be considered too. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So this will conclude our public comment. We're going to go on to item number 5, our discussion and action items. So we're going to start with 5A, which is a consideration of a resolution in opposition to an initiative that's coming up. So Lori, do you want to start this one?
Thank you, Mayor. And I introduce Erin Sassy, who is our Regional Government Affairs. What is she? Are you the manager? The director?
Regional Public Affairs Manager.
There you go. From Cal Cities for the Riverside County region. And Erin has graciously agreed to come and give you a presentation with regard to this initiative, the Taxpayer Protection and Government Accountability Act, which does none of those things. But she's going to tell you about what it really does and what it means for our region and for Norco. So really, this is something that you had asked us to put on the agenda and have a discussion about. So thank you, Erin, for coming. And Diane, if you want to switch over to her PowerPoint, please. I'll turn it over to Erin.
Mayor, council, staff, thank you for having me here tonight. I'm here to talk to you about this initiative that was placed on the ballot recently. It did just qualify February 1st to be placed on the 2024 ballot. Is it?
You got to be closer to it.
Okay, sorry. You know, this is something that with a broad coalition of labor, infrastructure advocates, other local government groups, and education, we are opposing. Who is the CBRT who is sponsoring this? It's big corporations like Albertsons, Chevron, Wells Fargo, Union Pacific Railroad, Pepsi, really a lot of organizations that can raise a lot of funds, which you can see back in 2018 and 2024. They've already raised a lot of money for this initiative. This has been something that's come up several times, reiterations of it over several years. So this is the first time it's actually qualified. So what does this do? So basically it goes back to January 1st of 2022. So all tax initiatives going back to that date have to qualify under the terms of this initiative. So one of the terms is you have to have a sunset date. So there were several initiatives that were passed since January 1st, 2022, about 200 of them, that will have to requalify under these terms. What are the requirements? Basically, this will require voter approval for any existing tax in a new territory that is annexed, and to new services or products. So let's say you had a utility user tax, so electricity, gas, and it also applies to some state taxes. So it's nice to see that local government is not being targeted by itself. It does also applies to the state. One of the big components, and this is something I really would like to highlight, is that it would disqualify you from doing local advisory measures. So if you want to get input from your community on a tax measure and how to spend those funds, you would not be allowed to do so if this passes. So it really takes away your community input. It overturns the Upland decision, which has to do with initiatives that have been placed on the ballot by voters, and voters that may not amend a city charter. So the cities that have or a city charter, they wouldn't be able to extend or impose or increase a tax or fee. I think the fees and charges component of this is really where it gets complicated and is very problematic for local governments, for you as a city. It says that you have to use reasonable costs when you rent out any sort of government facility, so your community centers, but also public works infrastructure. If you're leasing it out for utilities, gas companies, or whatnot, your fees and charges for services and permits may not exceed the actual cost of providing that product or service. And the actual cost is the minimum amount necessary. So this is where it gets really tricky. It will also come down to what staff you have working on these projects. If you have a staff level at one level, it may be a certain fee. If you have a staff level member at a different level that makes a different amount of money, your fee would be different. So there's going to be a lot of confusion. There's going to be a lot of ambiguity, and there won't be any sort of stability in what your fees are. And you also have to say, you have to prove that there is clear and convincing evidence that your fee and charge is not a tax. So also a lot of burden on you to really have these fees and to say why you have them. And you cannot do vehicle miles traveled on new developments. Another piece that is really complicated is that you may require voter approval for fines and penalties for those that violate your local laws. So if you have nuisance abatement, organic waste reduction, or maintaining vacant properties, it's likely going to lead to litigation. What's the fiscal impact? We're talking about $2 billion that from fees and charges that are at risk each year. In addition to, like I said, a lot of litigation costs. So there's so much ambiguity and uncertainty and unclarity with this measure that there will be a lot of litigation just to understand what it means. So in addition to the loss of potential revenues that really support your city services that are critical to your communities, you may have to also do a lot of litigation cost. So really just to recap, new voter approvals, you need a sunset date on any new measure. It impacts city charter amendments. Local advisory measures would be prohibited. And it really makes it difficult to impose your fees and charges for services. Like I said, making it very difficult for you to provide the services that your community relies on. And it jeopardizes your just authority as a whole. So what does it do? It takes away your local control, basically, your local decision making for your city, and puts a lot of your services at jeopardy. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions, but it's definitely something that I wanted to make sure you all understand. It's a very complicated measure. They will be very well funded, and it will be something that is pretty complicated for everybody to understand, but really puts a burden on your city.
Thank you, Erin, for the presentation. Does council have questions? So I think I'm going to start over here. Kevin?
Yeah, first of all, our Measure R was 2018, so we're in the clear on that. So the issue with this, of course, is it sounds like it's something to curtail taxes, and a lot of people may take it that way. Is the league, I kind of know the answer to this, but I want you to explain it to me. What's the league going to do to offset the misunderstanding of this law? Because people will vote on and think, oh yeah, lower fees, lower taxes. When in point of fact, this could literally it could totally interrupt how your city functions.
Well, step one is education like this right now. We're not in an official campaign, so right now it's really just making sure that you all understand the impacts of this. But then one thing that I know I ask all of you is to really start putting together data on what this means for your particular city, because it will be something different for every city. And even just coming up with what the impacts are will be challenging, because like I already stated, depending on what staff you have working on a permit or if, you know, a project, it could change that fee that you have. So right now, like I said, it's all about education moving forward as we progress closer to 2024 when this is on the ballot. You know, we may switch to a campaign mode. There's some steps that have to be taken, and then it would be a little bit more broad and in terms of working with stakeholders within every community, asking all of you to do a little bit more publicly, maybe with the media, but really it's about education, and that's our big priority.
And then my other question is one of the things I noticed, and I got several answers, is in terms of the waste, all the fines and things you can charge. Do you have an idea of how that would affect when people, let's say, stockpile manure in their backyards for horses, or they have a private non-franchise hauler that takes the stuff away? Is that something that might be out of your expertise, and maybe she might be able to answer that?
I can take a stab. So that provision is actually speaking to a situation where you're penalizing, where the city has an ability to impose a penalty on an entity that is violating. So, for example, if there were the gas company pursuant to its franchise did something they're not allowed to do, and we're allowed to impose a fine. So it's limiting our ability to do that. Or, for example, if we have a nuisance property and we do a nuisance abatement and we impose our costs on that property, it's taking away our ability to do that or limited that. So it's really about bad actors. And surprise, surprise, these are the railroad and these major corporations do not want the ability to be held accountable for when they behave badly, and that's really problematic. To call that a taxpayer protection measure, it's really a corporation protection measure, masquerading as other things.
Can you remember that, a corporation tax? I like that. That's a good slogan. It's not a tax measure to save residents, but it's to save corporations so that they can do whatever they want to you.
Right.
Right. Thank you. That's all I have, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Aaron.
Councilmember Allman. Councilmember Newton.
Good evening. Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Question and then, well, two parts. The second one's a projection. On page 235, this is 2B. My question is this. This is additional costs and public service effects on fee charge programs. And the statement of fact that you're making here, not you specifically, but the organization, the risk to fees and charges will make infrastructure financing more difficult and will deter new residential and commercial development. So I understand that point with the fees, how that'll make infrastructure financing more difficult. But how do you, I guess part of my question then is, how will this deter new residential and commercial development when the supporters of this, a percentage of them are large home builders, large developers, and large realty companies? It's like the other side to this is, why would you support something that's not going to help your business?
You want to try? You want me to try?
Well,
other than
okay, so part of this
they
bullet is talking
lie.
about the legal risks of it. So
Pardon?
the increased legal costs. I know that this is a Michael Coleman document. He's our fiscal advisor that we contract with.
Mm-hmm.
He's very smart.
I can try. So
Okay.
I think what this is referring to is that right now, you know, we spoke about it last council meeting, that cities expect new development to pay its own way, right? And the way we do that is through establishing development impact fees that are done based on a fee study that are reasonably estimated costs of providing that new infrastructure. So flash forward, if cities do not have effectively don't have the ability to impose development impact fees, it becomes very difficult because it's virtually impossible to know the exact actual cost of what it will take to support infrastructure. It's always based on sort of an estimate and a study, and there's a process we go through. That if we can't recap those costs, I think cities are going to have to think long and hard about what development they permit. And I think that's what this is getting to. So the league is saying there may be this unintended consequence, because you're right, one of the major home builders is on that list, right?
Right.
So
Well, a couple of them.
Yeah, so I think
Right.
that, you know, Michael Coleman is sort of pointing out here that they're not really thinking this through to its logical conclusion, because again, cities are really going to have to look at their general plans and decide how much and what kind of development we even permit if we can't recoup the full cost. That's really challenging.
Okay. It just, the way that read was, why would you support an agenda item that is going to hurt your business?
Right. Their real goal is to be able to do development and operate without paying any of their own costs. Right. They don't want to have to pay any of those costs.
In the housing discussion, afterwards I talked to the attorney, and one of the things that's happening with this is that they can litigate in the state of California with SB 35 sitting on top of it. So you litigate with the very people that want you to build housing. So in essence, you're going to build the housing, but you don't get any of the fees, the cost of the city. I mean, all those things. So basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to sort of tag team off of this, stripping away local control, and now they're stripping away the cost that you engender, so they can just come in and do whatever the hell they want.
Well, Kevin, we know who the enemy is. So this is a projection question, okay? And it has to do with franchise fees. If this was to pass, okay? So next year, we are going to be going out to bid for our waste hauling franchise. And on top of that, we collect a franchise fee. How would that franchise fee be affected if this was to pass? If we stayed with the same waste hauler, would that current fee remain? Or if we go with a different waste hauler, how do we negotiate a new franchise fee with a new contract if this was to pass?
So there is some complications, and I'm going to let Lori take some of this, but I will say that things that are protected under Prop 218 shouldn't be impacted by this, but it's not guaranteed that they won't be. There's still, like I said, some unclarity with that. So some of the franchise fees should be okay, but it doesn't mean 100% that they will be.
But I don't believe our waste hauling franchise fee is a Prop 218, is it?
It usually depends on whether your franchise fee is connected to your residential or your commercial waste hauling. A lot of the franchise fees are connected to commercial waste hauling, so that gets around the Prop 218 issue. Franchise fees are a different animal. There are some recent Supreme Court cases on point dealing with franchise fees, so they're somewhat different than what we're discussing with the Business Roundtable. For franchise fees, there has to be some new justifications that the courts have talked about, and many cities are grappling with those justifications. So that they have a special place in finance right now that cities are trying to grapple with.
Right.
So I think to your question as to how this impacts trash franchise fees, I don't think we know that right now, but we will have to look into that. But as Colin notes, there are other interesting challenges with franchise fees that we just need to work through.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Aaron, it may be too early to tell. I know if we got a resolution on here, but is most of the cities in California opposing this, or is the woke cities up north going to go for it?
Because we're still in the educational part of it, I really can't speak to where people stand with their opposition, but I will say that I haven't seen support for it, but it doesn't mean it's not out there.
Right. I figured everybody down here would be against it in Southern California. So, okay, thank you.
Anybody have any further questions for Aaron? All right, thank you, Aaron, for coming tonight and sharing the information with us. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for public comment. Do we have any cards?
I have no cards.
All right, thank you. So open, close. So we will bring it back to council for discussion and action.
Can I make a motion, adopt resolution number 2023-13, opposing initiative number 21-0042A1, the Taxpayer Protection and Government Accountability Act?
Second. So it's been moved and seconded to adopt resolution 2023-13.
Okay, I'm sorry, who's second?
I'll let Greg have it.
The mayor.
Okay. Mayor did. Okay, thank you. Okay, go ahead and vote, please. Thank you. Motion passed 5-0.
All right, next item up is appointments to regional boards, standing committees, and other council-appointed committees. And so the city manager will take this one.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is following reorganization of the council. The mayors traditionally look at the appointments. So we circulated the list back to Mayor Gredmeyer, and she's provided her updated appointments for the rest of 2023. So those are attached to your staff report.
Right. Does council have any questions of staff or myself? All right. Public comment?
None.
Okay. Open and close the public comment. So I'll bring it back to council for discussion and action.
To approve the updated list of appointments to regional boards, standing committees, and other city council appointed committees for calendar year 2023.
Second?
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to approve the appointment list. We'll call for the vote.
You vote, please. Thank you. Motion passed 5-0.
All right, moving on to item number 6. Ordinance number 1094, our first reading. And this is going to be Diane.
Yes, this is something that the city clerk's office generally will look over. Sometimes the municipal codes get crossed over because we've adopted something new. So we're bringing this code amendment forward basically just to clean up some language within the chapter of 6.12 pertaining to vicious dogs. And we request that you approve.
Does council have any questions for Diane?
I just have a general question.
Yeah.
I apologize. I thought Melvin would be here, so if anyone doesn't know the answer. But just in general, it talks about in the ordinance, right, that, a person in control of any dog and where dogs are allowed to run at large. What does the leash law in California state? I know we see sometimes dogs running at large out in various areas of the city. They're not leashed, and depending on the kind of dog that you have, or other people's dogs maybe that aren't friendly to dogs, that could pose a risk. There is a leash law in California, correct?
Councilmember Elliman, I believe those are local laws, and I don't want to misspeak, so I don't want to speak to it. But I can get you that information.
Okay, but it.
We do have a code.
Yeah, we
that-
have
Right.
a local. I don't believe it's a state law. So we have a local leash law. This ordinance is just cleaning up. There's no policy change. So
Right.
my apologies that I don't have any information on it.
Okay, and I believe Melvin had told me, I just wanted to clarify for the public's benefit, that dogs are not allowed to run at large anywhere in the city, even on your property. They must be fenced in because of the
Unless they're
risk that they
fenced.
pose to persons or other animals as well.
Most cities have such a law, and I'd be surprised if we did not. So, yes.
Unless your property's fenced, correct, yes, but we see animals that are not fenced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Councilmember Hannah?
Yeah, I was hoping Melvin would be here tonight to answer this, but I've noticed quite a few here lately during the rains that there's a lot of dogs loose, not just in my area, but all over town. And I was wondering, and you're part of the group that goes down to the river bottom and counts to take the census on the homeless. Do a bunch of them have dogs?
In the riverbed, we actually didn't find anybody this year, but I wouldn't be able to speak to that. My experience has been no, but I don't know if we can. Do you want to have the deputy answer that question?
Yeah,
real quick?
a lot of these dogs that I see don't have a collar on or tags. And so I was just wondering where they're coming from. I live 5 houses from the river, but I've also seen them back in that way going up towards the shelter and everything. And then there's somebody posted on social media about loose dogs, but they show pictures of them. They've got tags and everything, but these I've been seeing don't have anything.
Can one of our law enforcement folks answer, like, do we have a lot of our homeless that have pets or dogs with them, or? Okay. Okay.
Are the
And-
majority of them leashed? Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Well, a lot of them that I used to see, because I don't get out that much anymore, but up at the Circle K and the 7-Eleven, the people that come up there that walked up there and had dogs, and they were begging for money, and they always had dogs and cigarettes. So, you know, you don't know, I mean, don't have no income or anything like that, but, and I never did ask, Lieutenant Briddick. He was the one that started the sweeping campaign on those. I never did ask him if those dogs were tagged or not. I'm sure if they weren't, he'd called the shelter. But these I've been seeing don't have a tag on them. And
Well, and I know for like our CityNet and our homeless program, they do help with the pets and stuff, and making sure that's taken care of. So, yeah. Perfect. All right. Thank you.
thank you.
Any other questions of staff? All right. We're going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Any comment cards?
I have no comment cards.
Close the public hearing. So I'm going to bring it back to council for discussion and action.
Premature to ask for a motion.
No, go right ahead.
Adopt ordinance number 1094, first reading, amending specific text in Norco Municipal Code NMC, Chapter 6.12, Dogs Licensing Control Rabies, to make corrections and ensure consistency. Code Amendment 2023-02.
Second.
Okay, the clerk will call for the vote.
Thank you. Vote, please. Thank you. Motion passed 5-0.
All right, thank you. So moving on to item number 7, city staff. Anybody have any communication? Yes. Oh, you have to say your thing.
I thought that Councilmember Bash's reading of the actual agenda language was so close to the title of the ordinance. I thought we had substantial compliance there. I can read it again if the council wants, but
Let's just do it
Okay,
for
great.
fun. I don't want you to miss out.
I like the lawyer part. Thank you. This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Norco, California, amending specific text in the Norco Municipal Code, Chapter 6.12. Dog licensing control rabies pertaining to vicious dogs in order to make corrections and ensure consistency. Code Amendment 2023-02.
Well done, Colin. All right. Staff communications. Any city staff? All right. City attorney. City manager. I'll start down here. Berwin, anything?
Question for Chad over there on, and I know it's been a headache for you, the reconstruction of Pedley Avenue. You know, you can't go anywhere over there, but 4 or 5 years ago when you and I were over the same morning after a heavy rain, the new storm drains were in, and they missed the puddles on the 2 storm drains, one by Buzz's house and one by Gary Schoen's. They missed them by 50 feet on there. Now, with this new construction, are they gonna make that water go down the storm drain? Are they gonna move the storm drain or move the puddle, or what are they gonna do?
capturing almost all that water.
He said that they did work correctly, or? It will.
Capturing all the water.
It will work, because, you know, water comes down through there pretty much from the east up there from the hills and everything. But I've had several people ask me. They won't call you. Now, if you're back on the council, you can go get on him about that. Well, they only missed him by 50 feet, so what's the big deal, you know? And,
It'll have a very positive effect.
okay, good deal. Thank you.
Councilmember Newton.
Two items. Chad had mentioned earlier, this is on the storm drain project. Right now they're at 3rd Street near Sierra, under the bridge. And that's going to run all the way up Sierra, just south of 4th Street, correct? Or I'm sorry, Valley View. Right. There you go. Okay. From where they are now, at 3rd and the freeway. Can you provide to us a critical path schedule on that? Okay. And this contractor will be the same contractor on another project in town? Right, on 4th Street. So if he's slow out of the gate on this, what Sam mentioned on the scope of work for 4th Street to start in like 60 days and be a 90-day project, I think we need to look at that a little closer if we're already running behind where we are on Valley View, and it's the same contractor.
And we've had that discussion with them, you know, because we told them we have concerns because tell them their means and methods, timeline, and we
Well, I understand weather, but we're moving out of that season right now. And the contract does have, you have a notice to proceed, you have a timeline, and you have liquidated damages. So.
whether we're happy or upset regarding that process and what we could do to help.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay.
Hopefully, the public surprised as far as what they're doing, but also
Yeah, well, and I'd also like you to develop, as you can, a construction on this newest project on 4th Street, because my fear is that we're still going to be piddling around on Valley View with the current work when we should also be starting at the same time on 4th Street. So, just a concern that I have, if you don't mind. Going by the schedule that was quoted to council tonight. The other item Bonnie brought up, we had a discussion on backyard trails, and has that gone further than with Streets and Trails Commission as far as cleaning those up, maintaining them?
Trying to get an idea of really
Mm-hmm.
and all the whole trail system to kind of look at that. We didn't document everything that's there. So we actual cost. That's what I'm working on now. Cost, no understanding whatever. Pilot, we say, hey, property owners, adjacent property. I want to have good information that progress on that we're working through.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Pardon?
Yeah, I did
Oh,
want to
I'm
add,
sorry.
so Chad did a great summary of that, and I know the members of the Streets and Trails Committee worked hard on kind of riding those trails, and thank you for photographic evidence. My concern is that I'm concerned about the city assuming any new maintenance responsibilities that are currently someone else's maintenance responsibilities. Now, that's a new ongoing cost to us that I have concerns about. It is ultimately a policy choice, but, you know, those residents bought properties with trails they were required to maintain. And I understand years ago the city did send annual notices to people. I actually heard this from a longtime resident this week, that the city used to send notices and require people to clean their trails or lean them, which I haven't confirmed that, but that's what I was told. Maybe some folks will remember those days. So what Chad and I have talked about, there might be sort of a medium in between, where these places are just totally out of control. It might be that there could be projects along the way to assist homeowners in getting them these one-time sort of cleaning them out where giant trees are now and so forth. But those ongoing maintenance costs are significant. We're already spending, I think, north of $600,000 a year, and is the new cost in Measure R ish, just on our existing city trails. So it's a very expensive project to undertake. So I just want to make sure that when you can consider those issues, that they're considered in light of all the universe of needs we have, right? This is a need, but there are other needs that we have in with regard to all of our facilities and programs, that, you know, frankly, I don't think we're in a position to be expanding our services at this point. So that's just something we've committed to have a discussion with you about, but I think you need to have the discussion in light of all your budget priorities and your understanding the kind of the complete fiscal picture.
You're right on that. The city did used to send out notices a long time ago about cleaning them up, and we used to ride them quite a bit, and they were pretty good, but there's a lot of encroachments. I'm sure there's more, and I was telling, I don't know, it was Chad or who it was the other day, man, you rode this trail, Greg, several years ago over there off of Western and Kip's Corner behind Dale Street.
Mm-hmm.
And they built barns and corrals. They leave room for a horse to go down through there, and that never got taken care of. This was one of 2 week deals, and never made it. But there is a lot of tumbleweeds in those trails, so I can see them when I drive by there.
I just got a text that people can't, something's happening with his mic, and we have to make sure we talk into our mics.
Well, I'm just going to remind everybody we shouldn't have a meeting right now. Just have your comments.
Well, the only
Move
comment
along.
I wanted to finish up with Lori was that, with that, as we look at it, we've gone the whole gamut from Public Works used to maintain a section of it. Then we had CAL FIRE do it, and then that's with the prisoners, and then different volunteer groups also. And if you want an experience, go on those backyard trails and you will see code violations like you wouldn't imagine.
Probably two dead bodies in there, too.
Yeah. Thank you,
Alright.
Mayor.
Councilmember Alleman.
Yes, I wanted to see if we could have a future discussion on AB 1000, which is working its way through committee right now. It is the Good Neighbor Policy Bill. It died in committee last year, but it's come back with some changes based on feedback. Basically what it is it establishes that a 100,000 square foot or larger warehouse couldn't be built within 1,000 feet of a sensitive receptor, which would be things like a school, a daycare, a place of worship, a community center, a playground. It does allow for some mitigation factors that would allow it to be built a little bit closer if there are some mitigation factors for air quality, for instance, which is the concern with these large logistic warehouses that are popping up all over the region, and it's really a regional issue. So I wanted to bring that to the attention of my colleagues and see if they would be amenable to discuss if the city would support or not. But I think it's very timely and very pertinent to concerns that our residents have and that affect our city, even if these large buildings are not being built in our city. They are happening all over, and that affects our quality of life.
Is that a motion?
Do I need a motion to get?
I heard a motion, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Certainly second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to bring the topic of AB 1000 back to the council.
Very good. Okay. Go ahead and vote. Alrighty, that motion passed 5-0.
All right. Thank
And
you.
then one more, based on our discussion tonight, wanted to see if my colleagues were also amenable to bringing back a discussion on establishing a formal rotation for how we move through mayor pro tem and mayor in the future. That is a motion.
Second.
Under discussion
Okay.
on that. This has always been a choice by council members, and I'm not going to support a fixed rotation. I think we have to look at it individually, and in the past we've had situations where some council members just would not represent the city properly.
I think that's
And-
part of the discussion, no?
Yeah, and
So
that's-
you can vote no on the motion.
Yeah, so my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, would just be that it would be brought back for discussion so
For a
that you
discussion.
could share your opinion.
Okay.
You know, everybody up here can share their opinion and their thought, and the policy may work, it may not work, but that way we can discuss it and not get in trouble for, violating the Brown Act.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor.
Correct. And a second, right? Yeah, I seconded.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
sorry, I missed that.
Having the discussions are never a bad thing.
Go ahead and vote, please. Thank you. Motion passed 4-1.
All right. Anything else, Councilmember Allman? Councilmember, or Mayor Pro Tem Bash.
Yeah, first off, just as a comment on the Bluff Trails, what's very interesting is that the backyard trails, if you build an ADU, you measure from the middle of the trail. So the houses, the ADUs, which I'm not against, but they're literally 4 feet off what is really the established property line. So there's a part of me that thinks, well, since they own the trail, they need to be cleaning it up. But that's just something that I've discovered through Alma with a beautiful ADU that was built. I have no problem with it, but it's literally right next to the chain link. And I really think that maybe we need to look at figuring out if they own the trail, then they clean it up. But if they don't, if we want to establish they don't, then we need to move that ADU off the property line, because literally it's right next to the fence. So I think that's something we might need to look at. Planning Commission, that's the first time, I mean, you guys may have gone, I was never a planning commissioner, but that trip you all took was fabulous. I think that I applaud whoever came up with that idea, because I think training planning commissioners, because they have a legal responsibility, is awesome. And I understand it was an awesome experience, so kudos to that. And then I have heard, if you could check this out, that Goalie is taking over the entire facility and rehiring back 3,000 employees. Can you double check that before it kind of, they literally are going to reopen that within a matter of months. That's all I have, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. At this time, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Time is 9:01. Thank you, everybody, for...
Madam Mayor,
Oh,
going back
that's
into
right. We're going to a closed session. So, meetings got to be left open?
That's correct, Madam Mayor. 'Cause we
Oh,
have to come
so
back and
if
do
you
the
guys want to see the tap of
announcement.
the old gavel, you're going to have to come back. I'm going to say 5-minute restroom break, and we will adjourn to closed session in the back room.
Correct.
Thank
Madam
you.
Mayor, going to closed session, conference with labor negotiator. Anticipated litigation, there's actually 2 matters. One was a written threat of litigation. The other has to do with some trouble getting out of a stream that ran through a city park. The last is a real property negotiation.
Thank you.